The HOA president, let's call her Karen, stood at the community meeting with this incredibly sweet smile plastered on her face as she announced a surprise compliance inspection for today. She held a clipboard, and I noticed it was shaking just a little bit as she started listing all the prohibited items with this dramatic, theatrical authority. She'd clearly been practicing. The list went on, but then she paused, letting the silence hang in the air, before mentioning firearms allegedly stored within our homes. You could feel the shift in the room immediately. Neighbors started murmuring nervously. That's when she claimed she had emergency powers that none of us had ever heard of. A few minutes later, there's a knock at my door. It's her, demanding I surrender my weapons immediately for inspection. I just looked at her calmly and asked for any warrants, credentials, or statutes that supported her demand. She scoffed, literally scoffed, and said that HOA rules outrank personal rights in this community. The air got thick with suspense. That's when I noticed phones were coming out. Neighbors were quietly recording the whole thing. Undeterred, she threatened to involve the police, completely oblivious to the irony that was about to unfold.
The third, and they are re-reusing lots of
I stepped outside, reached into my jacket, and slowly, deliberately displayed my badge. There was no mistaking what it was. Her smug smile just cracked. Pure confusion flooded her eyes as her words completely failed her. I identified myself. United States Marshal, stated my federal authority clearly and calmly. The silence that fell over the street was heavier than any argument ever could be. Suddenly, she started backpedaling, loudly claiming it was all a misunderstanding, just a concern for community safety. I took the opportunity to patiently explain federal law preemption and the serious consequences of an attempted unlawful seizure of private property. Neighbors started leaning in closer, realizing the power dynamic had just completely flipped. But she was frantic now, still insisting the inspection had to proceed, waving her clipboard and citing HOA bylaws like they were scripture. That's when I decided to make it official. I radioed my supervisor, right there in front of everyone, documenting the attempted unlawful confiscation. And just then, in the distance, we heard it. The faint sound of sirens approaching. The suspense spiked. She tried to make a quick exit, but she seemed frozen to the spot, trapped by the accountability that was literally driving up the street. Marked federal vehicles pulled up, badges flashed, and the authority was undeniable. Agents stepped out and began separating the parties, taking statements while cameras, both from neighbors and official ones, were rolling steadily. The HOA president protested, claiming ignorance, her earlier confidence now completely replaced by raw fear. The agents calmly explained to her that an attempted seizure of firearms under these pretenses constituted serious federal violations. In that moment of realization, her clipboard slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the pavement. The sound echoed across the street. Neighbors gasped, finally understanding just how close their fundamental rights had come to being violated. Through it all, I remained calm. My training kicked in, and professionalism guided every measured word and action. The lead agent requested warrants against the HOA for a full review of their records. The suspense shifted. It was no longer about confrontation. It was about the inevitable consequences that were now in motion. The president was quietly and publicly detained, pending a full investigation. Right after HOA offices were sealed for a comprehensive audit, within hours, every resident received an official notice, affirming our rights and clarifying the legal protections we all have. It wasn't long before the news vans arrived, their crews capturing the stunned but relieved reactions from people all up and down the block. I was asked for an interview, but I declined, simply stating that the law speaks for itself. The authority she thought she wielded dissolved even faster than her smile had. The fallout was swift. Court filings followed, citing impersonation of authority, intimidation tactics, and multiple civil rights violations. The community meeting that night felt completely different. It was calmer, more constructive. Neighbors were asking real questions, finally learning about the actual legal limits of an HOA's power. A temporary board was formed, this time with proper legal oversight present to guide them. The air of suspense that had choked our neighborhood for so long was finally replaced by a palpable sense of relief and quiet resolve. The next morning, the former president resigned through her council. The charges against her progressed methodically, without any more drama or spectacle. I returned home to find my doors intact, my rights untouched, and a sense of peace restored to my own four walls. Outside, kids were playing, completely unaware of how close things had come to chaos. As evening fell, porch lights flickered on, one by one, like normalcy itself was returning to the neighborhood. I sat down and filed my official report, closing the incident. My supervisor later commended my restraint, my thorough documentation, and the clarity with which I handled the situation. In the weeks that followed, the HOA bylaws were completely rewritten, with all the unlawful clauses stripped out. New mandatory training sessions were put in place for all future board members to ensure something like this could never happen again. The suspense now lived only in memory. The former president's name became a cautionary tale, a local legend about what happens when power goes unchecked. Her assumed authority learned a hard lesson in humility, taught by federal statutes. At the next block party, neighbors bonded, sharing stories of past overreach, finally feeling free to speak up. The new HOA board even issued refunds for prior improper fines that had been levied under the old regime. The whole street just felt lighter, freer, and genuinely safer. I kept my badge unseen again, tucked away where it belonged. It turned out that power, when it's misused, collapses under the bright light of lawful scrutiny. The neighbors' cameras captured accountability without needing any more confrontation. The ending wasn't loud or explosive. It was just correct. Justice wasn't about a dramatic showdown. It was about the quiet, firm application of the law. The lesson from that day spread far beyond our little community. We heard that HOAs all across the state started nervously reviewing their own policies. People's rights were reinforced through a newfound awareness and vigilance. That evening, I walked my dog, breathing just a little bit easier. Neighbors waved, and there was a grateful understanding in their eyes. The former president was facing her consequences, and the fear that had gripped our community was giving way to informed confidence. The system worked because it was challenged properly. That night I slept deeply, knowing that boundaries had been tested and they had held firm. The morning brought the routine sound of the mail truck, not the dread of another warning notice. My coffee tasted better without a side of intimidation. Trust on the block began to rebuild, slowly but surely, because the law doesn't have to shout to be heard, just has to stand firm. Authority without jurisdiction is a ghost. It fades the second you shine a light on it. She thought her clipboard could conquer constitutional rights. She was profoundly mistaken. A federal badge ended the confusion, and justice arrived, measured and final. The HOA learned its place, and the residents learned theirs. And my badge? It stayed hidden, because peace in the neighborhood no longer required enforcement. The story ends quietly, correctly. No heroes, just accountability. And the HOA never tried that again. Thanks for watching.